Rowling isn't the first prominent novelist to write under a different name. Many of the world's best-selling authors adopt a pseudonym, especially when trying their hand at different genres. Remember Mark Twain? I hope you do. The genius behind Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Well, his real name is actually Samuel Clemens. Early on, the best-selling horror author Stephen King published some books under the pen name Richard Bachman, and Lewis Carroll, author of the beloved Alice in Wonderland, was really a Mr. Charles Dodgson. Well, the list goes on, but more interesting questions. Not who writes under a pseudonym, but why? Why do authors decide not to put their real name on paper? Well, joining me now to shed some light on this is Alison Potter, an author better known under her invented identity or pseudonym Ali. No, Alison or Ali, what do you prefer?
Well, since I'm here talking about work, I'm Ali, so I'm Ali.
Why?
Well, it was really my publisher who told me that we needed that, but I think she was totally right. In my first meeting with her, when she was very excited about my first novel, Wink Murder, she said, well, we've got a problem, which is your name. It just isn't thrillerish enough.
Alison
and that's
Potter.
What I write, Alison Potter. I write thrillers,
What's
and
wrong
it just is. Potter is wrong because in an age of search engines, you're going to end up 5 pages down beyond Harry and Beatrix. And as a debut writer starting out, it's a real challenge to get noticed, and you're doing everything you can to kind of help yourself.
Okay, so Alison or Ali, I get that. I mean, I get the Potter 5 sort of searches down from Harry or Beatrix, which leads me to the idea of publishing and the marketing of books. Yeah. Is a name bigger than the story these days, do you think?
Well, if you sell well, it can be,
right.
And you've got to put yourself in a position where you can get there. So, for example, another reason for not sticking with Alison, was it doesn't translate well internationally. And these days, a writer is not just thinking about the British readers; you're thinking about readers in all sorts of different territories. So, my first book, Wink Murder, was translated into 10 languages, which means you're dealing with Finnish, Hebrew, Italian, and Dutch, and so a shorter, snappier word, it just translates better internationally.
Ali Knight, there you go. Wink Murder, Ali Knight, the first. It works on the front of the. I guess it works on the front cover.
Yeah, I think
George Orwell also works. I'm not sure that Arthur Blair would have done. Would Arthur Blair have worked?
I think it all depends. I think with literary fiction, it's much easier to write under your own name. I think if you're doing genre, so a thriller writer has to have a certain kind of name feels right. If you're doing historical fiction, you would choose a very different kind of name. Yeah. And I think with thrillers, it is about being sharp and kind of punchy. You need to tie your name to your genre.
Joseph Conrad was called, and I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but it was a sort of Polish connotation of, I think it was Conrad with a K, but then there was a further Polish name at the back end of it. So I guess again, this will sell internationally better than the original name would have done. I've got a conspiracy theory here that I want to put you. We've talked about whether the name is bigger than the story these days. If I were to suggest that the J.K. Rowling story is a publishing dream, that flushing out J.K. as the author of this book, once it's been well received, albeit only read or only bought by 1,500 people and only reviewed by 30, given a casual vacancy, which was her first sort of post-Harry Potter book, was pretty awful. Is this about reviewing ahead of time a book by J.K., then flushing out the fact that it's her? She sells 500,000% more books, you can't get hold of one. I mean, do you know what I mean? I mean, how does the publishing marketing world work?
Well, they're very clever. And also, I think from our point of view as writers, the fact that this story recently it means more people are talking about books, and that's good for us generally. But for her, I mean, I think she's said it's liberating writing as a man, and I think after her experience before of doing Harry Potter, that's kind of quite an interesting thing.
You're raising an eyebrow slightly.
No, I think it's no accident that the paperback's coming out in I think February, so it's perfect kind of timing. So
Okay, and I'm not going to push you on JK necessarily anymore, but I do want you to just give us a sort of sense or flavour of the world of publishing. I mean, I'm holding up books here. I mean, I could be holding up my iPad tonight and showing the Kindle or whatever. It's a mysterious world, the world of publishing. But you only have to sell. I mean, this book is 1984 sold thousands of copies, but not necessarily millions and millions of copies. You know, how does it work? And you know,
That's a good question.
money in publishing these days.
How do they make money? Well, I think it probably all tends to go to the big hits. So obviously JK is one of the biggest around. E.L. James would be another one who's really sort of gone well. And I think in this day of, you know, sort of increasing globalization, your big hits are bigger, and then the sort of lower end is even smaller. So before she was known as JK, she'd sold about 500 copies in Britain, and that's not unusual. That's actually probably quite a good sale. So it's a good life, but it's a tough life.
Ali Knight or Alison Potter, one of the top 10 crime writers or books to take on holiday as suspenseful Hitchcockian tale is the first cut, says for the Daily Telegraph. Anyway, it's the latest one.
That's right, yes, that's out now.
Take that over.